The sound of applause fills the air as Emily accepts her diploma, her smile radiant under the graduation cap. In the audience, Amanda beams with pride, catching her daughter's eye with a subtle thumbs up. The moment perfect until Mark rises from his seat, champagne glass in hand. I'd like to make an announcement. Today marks not just Emily's new beginning, but mine as well. Amanda, he looks directly at his wife. I'm leaving you. Jenna and I are starting our life together. The silence that followed Mark's announcement seemed to stretch for an eternity. Amanda felt every eye on her, hundreds of them, as the blood drained from her face. Emily stood frozen on the stage, diploma clutched in her hand, her expression shifting from confusion to dawning horror. Mark, Amanda said, her voice surprisingly steady as she placed her hand gently on his arm. This isn't the time or place. This is Emily's day. But Mark shrugged off her touch, emboldened by whatever had driven him to this moment of cruelty. Everyone was going to find out anyway, he said, his voice carrying in the stunned quiet. I thought it would be easier this way, all at once. From 3 rows back, Jenna shifted uncomfortably, caught between apparent embarrassment and a strange pride at being publicly claimed. At 39, she looked conspicuously younger than Amanda, her highlighted hair and carefully maintained appearance a contrast to Amanda's more natural grace. President Harlow, the university's elderly leader, cleared his throat at the podium. Perhaps we should continue with the ceremony, he suggested delicately, gesturing for the next graduate to approach. But the damage was done. The perfect order of the ceremony had been shattered. Whispers raced through the crowd like wildfire. Amanda caught fragments. Can you believe he would? Poor Emily. The nerve at graduation of all places. On stage, Emily seemed to make a decision. Rather than returning to her seat, she walked directly to her mother, descending the steps with deliberate care in her graduation gown. Amanda stood to meet her, opening her arms. Mom, Emily whispered, her voice breaking as they embraced. I'm so sorry. Don't be, Amanda murmured back, stroking her daughter's hair, mindful of the cap. This is still your day. I'm okay. Mark stood awkwardly beside them, his moment of triumph fading as he registered the reactions around them. Several of Amanda's longtime friends were glaring openly at him. Emily's godfather, Richard, had half risen from his seat, looking ready to intervene. We'll talk about this later, Mark muttered, suddenly seeming to realize the spectacle he had created. Yes, we certainly will, Amanda replied, her voice quiet but with an edge of steel that made Mark look at her sharply. President Harlow had continued calling names, attempting to restore normalcy to the proceedings, but attention remained fractured. Jenna had shrunk in her seat, apparently less comfortable with the public nature of the announcement now that she was witnessing its impact. Emily pulled back from her mother's embrace, her eyes red but her posture straightening. I need to go back to my seat, she said, but I'm not staying at the reception. I'm coming home with you. Amanda shook her head. No, sweetheart. This is your graduation. Your friends are here, and there's the department gathering afterwards. I want you to go. She managed a smile that reached her eyes. I've got this. Trust me. Emily searched her mother's face. Are you sure? I'm sure, Amanda said, and found that she meant it. I'll see you at home tonight. We'll talk then. As Emily reluctantly returned to her seat, Amanda remained standing, her chin raised, refusing to slink away in humiliation. She caught the sympathetic glances, the looks of outrage on her behalf, the few smirks from those who took pleasure in others' misfortune. Through it all, she maintained her dignity, even as Mark awkwardly sat back down beside her, maintaining a foot of charged space between them. You could have waited, she whispered, not looking at him. I've waited long enough, he replied, a defensive edge to his voice. 25 years in your shadow, Amanda. Always the teacher's husband, living in your family's house, using your family's money. Our house, our money, she corrected calmly. Everything I had became ours when we married. That was the agreement. Mark's laugh was bitter. The agreement, right. Something in his tone made Amanda glance sideways at him. There was a smugness there that surprised her, even now. He thought he had the upper hand. That knowledge steadied her further. The ceremony continued, each name called, each graduate crossing the stage. Amanda applauded mechanically, her mind racing ahead. 25 years of marriage, ending in a public execution. Yet beneath her shock and pain, a strange calm was setting in. By the time the ceremony concluded, with Emily and her classmates tossing their caps into the air, Amanda had composed herself fully. She stood, gathering her purse. I'll be moving my things out tomorrow, Mark said, not meeting her eyes. Jenna and I have found a place. How convenient, Amanda replied coolly. I'll make sure I'm not home. He looked surprised at her calm, perhaps having expected tears or a scene. The house is half mine, you know, he added, a hint of warning in his voice. And my name is on all the accounts. Amanda allowed herself a small smile. Is that what you think, Mark? Before he could respond, they were interrupted by Emily's return. She had fought her way through the crowd of celebrating graduates, her expression determined. Mom, I'm ready to go if you are, she stated firmly. Mark reached for his daughter's arm. Emily, don't blame Jenna for this. These things happen. Your mother and I. Don't. Emily cut him off, jerking her arm away. Don't you dare try to explain this away or pretend it's mutual. What you just did was cruel, Dad. To Mom, to me, to everyone who cares about us. You're upset now, but you'll understand. I understand perfectly, Emily interrupted again. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. You humiliated Mom in front of hundreds of people on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. That tells me everything I need to know. Around them, people were moving toward the reception area, though many were still casting curious glances their way. Amanda placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. Emily, go to your reception. Your friends are waiting, and Professor Winters specifically mentioned wanting to introduce you to that publisher friend of his. Amanda's voice was gentle but firm. I meant what I said. I've got this. Emily hesitated, torn between loyalty and opportunity. Go, Amanda insisted. I'm going to head home and have a glass of wine and a long bath. We'll talk tonight. After another moment of hesitation, Emily relented. Okay, but I'm coming straight home after. No after parties. Deal, Amanda said, hugging her daughter once more. I'm so proud of you, honey. Nothing changes that. As Emily walked away, casting one last glare at her father, Mark shifted uncomfortably. Amanda, we should talk about how to handle this. The house, the accounts. Tomorrow, Mark, Amanda interrupted coolly. You've had your say today. Tomorrow will be my turn. Without waiting for his response, she turned and walked away, head high, back straight. She could feel curious eyes following her, but she didn't hurry her steps or hide her face. Let them look. Let them see that Amanda Matthews would not be broken by betrayal. It wasn't until she reached her car, sliding into the driver's seat and closing the door on the world, that she allowed herself a moment of reaction. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the steering wheel. One deep breath, then another. She reached for her phone and sent a brief text message to Sarah. It happened. He did it publicly. Moving to phase 2. The response came almost immediately. On it. Come over if you need company. Amanda smiled faintly, drawing strength from her friend's unwavering support. Then she started the car and drove away from the university, away from the ruins of her marriage, and toward the carefully constructed future she had been preparing without Mark's knowledge. Behind her, in the reception hall, Mark was already discovering that his bold move had consequences he hadn't anticipated. Several of Amanda's longtime friends had pointedly turned their backs when he approached. Emily's godfather, Richard, had cornered him with a few choice words about loyalty and decency, and Jenna, uncomfortable with the hostile glances, was suggesting they leave early. Mark Matthews thought he had orchestrated the perfect exit from his marriage. He had no idea that Amanda had written a very different final act. 6 months earlier, Amanda had been grading papers at the kitchen table when Mark's phone, left behind during his morning rush, had chimed with a message. She wouldn't have looked. Respect for privacy had always been fundamental in their marriage, except that the preview displayed on the screen had caught her eye. Can't wait for tonight. Wear that blue thing I like. The message was from Jennifer W., which Amanda knew was Mark's work colleague, Jenna Wilson. The familiarity of the message, its intimate tone, had made her stomach drop. For a moment, she'd sat frozen, red pen suspended over a student's essay on The Great Gatsby. That night, when Mark returned late claiming a client dinner had run long, Amanda had watched him with new eyes. The slight flush to his cheeks when he mentioned the client's name, the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to his collar, the way he avoided her eyes when he declined a glass of wine, saying he'd had enough already. How's Jennifer doing? Amanda had asked casually, testing the waters. Settling in well at the firm? Mark's hesitation had been brief but noticeable. Jenna? Yeah, she's doing great. Fast learner. The confirmation of her suspicions that Jennifer W. was indeed Jenna Wilson, and that Mark was familiar enough with her to have a nickname, had been like a stone settling in Amanda's stomach. Still, she hadn't confronted him. Not yet. Not without being certain. Not without a plan. The next day, she'd called Sarah Klein, her oldest friend and, conveniently, one of the city's most respected divorce attorneys. They'd met for coffee at a small cafe across town, far from Mark's office or their usual haunts. I might be overreacting, Amanda had said, staring into her latte after explaining the situation. It could be innocent. Sarah, sharp-eyed and practical after 20 years of handling divorces, had reached across the table to squeeze Amanda's hand. It could be, and if it is, no harm done. But if it's not, she'd paused. Amanda, I've seen this movie before, too many times, and I never thought Mark would be that guy. But men surprise you, Amanda had finished for her. She'd seen it herself, over decades of teaching. The seemingly devoted husband who ran off with his secretary. The loving father who abandoned his family for a younger model. She'd comforted colleagues through such betrayals, recommended Sarah's services more than once. She just never thought it would be her story. What do I do? she'd asked. You get smart, Sarah had replied, her voice hardening with professional resolve. You start documenting, and you remember that prenup your father insisted on. The prenuptial agreement had been a source of tension early in their marriage. Amanda's family had old money, not vast wealth, but substantial property and investments passed down through generations. Her father, cautious and protective, had insisted on the agreement despite Amanda's romantic objections. Mark had signed it with visible reluctance, and the document had been filed away, unmentioned for 25 years. There's a fidelity clause, Sarah reminded her. If either party commits adultery, they forfeit claim to the other's premarital assets. But we've combined everything over the years, Amanda pointed out. The house was my inheritance, but we've renovated together. The investments were started with my family money, but he's managed them, grown them. That's why you need to document, Sarah said firmly. Not just the affair, if there is one, but the money trail. Where has your money been going? Has he been spending it on her? Using joint funds for hotel rooms, gifts, trips? The systematic approach had given Amanda purpose amid the shock. She'd left that meeting with a plan, and over the following months, she'd executed it with meticulous care. She hadn't hired a private investigator, too risky in their close-knit community, but had instead become her own detective. She'd installed tracking software on their shared family computer. She'd noted Mark's absences, cross-referencing them with his claimed whereabouts. She'd created a spreadsheet of unusual expenses from their joint accounts. She'd photographed Mark and Jenna from a distance during a business lunch that involved far more leaning in and laughter than business required. Most critically, she'd quietly activated the terms of their prenuptial agreement through Sarah, documenting her suspicions and evidence with the family attorney who had drawn up the original agreement. It wasn't a formal filing, that would come later, but it established a timeline and intent that would be legally significant. Throughout it all, she'd maintained normalcy at home. She'd cooked Mark's favorite meals, asked about his day, kept up with their social obligations. If she was quieter than usual, more thoughtful, he hadn't seemed to notice. His attention was elsewhere. In March, 3 months before Emily's graduation, Amanda had received the confirmation she couldn't ignore. Mark had left his email open on their home computer, and a hotel reservation confirmation showed a king room booked in his name for a night he'd claimed to be at a financial conference in Chicago. The reservation was for a local hotel, just 30 minutes from their home. That night, sitting alone in their bedroom while Mark was working late, Amanda had allowed herself an hour of grief. She'd cried for the marriage she thought she had, for the betrayal that cut deeper than she'd imagined possible. Then she'd washed her face, called Sarah, and finalized their strategy. He's getting bolder, Sarah had observed during their next meeting. That's common. The longer they get away with it, the more risks they take. He mentioned wanting to use some of our savings to invest in a new opportunity, Amanda had said. $20,000. Said it could double quickly. Sarah's expression had hardened. Don't sign anything. Don't authorize any transfers. In fact, it might be time to start moving some assets to accounts he can't access. Isn't that illegal? Amanda had asked, hesitant. Not your personal inheritance funds, Sarah had explained. Those remain legally yours under the prenup, especially with the infidelity clause. We're just ensuring they're protected when everything comes to light. Carefully, with Sarah's guidance, Amanda had begun extracting her inherited assets from their joint holdings. Not everything. That would alert Mark immediately, but enough to ensure she wouldn't be left vulnerable. She'd opened new accounts at a different bank. She'd consulted with her family's financial advisor, separate from Mark's firm. She'd updated her will, removing Mark as the primary beneficiary. All the while, Emily's graduation approached. Amanda had thrown herself into preparations, genuinely excited for her daughter's achievement. Emily had noticed her mother's occasional distraction but attributed it to empty nest syndrome, now that her only child was officially launching into adulthood. You've gotten quiet lately, Mom, Emily had commented during a video call in April. Everything okay with you and Dad? Just processing this big life change, Amanda had replied, not quite lying. My brilliant daughter, heading out into the world. It's a lot to take in. The last piece had fallen into place a week before graduation, when Amanda had discovered credit card statements showing jewelry purchases from a high-end boutique, pieces she'd never received. That same day, she'd overheard a phone conversation where Mark had said, I'll figure it out. Just a little longer and none of that will matter. That night, she'd finalized everything with Sarah. Are you sure you want to wait? Sarah had asked. We could file now, catch him off guard. Amanda had considered it, tempted to end the charade immediately, but something had held her back. No, she'd decided finally. Let's wait until after Emily's graduation. She deserves this milestone without drama. The irony of that decision now, as Amanda drove home from the very graduation ceremony Mark had chosen to derail, wasn't lost on her. She'd tried to protect Emily from exactly the scene Mark had created. As Amanda pulled into the driveway of their colonial home, her family home, technically, inherited from her grandparents, she found herself strangely calm. The initial shock had faded, replaced by a cool, clear sense of purpose. Mark had made his move, public and devastating. Now it was her turn. She entered the quiet house, slipped off her heels, and poured herself the glass of wine she'd promised Emily she would have. Then she called Sarah. "He really did it," Amanda said when her friend answered. "At the ceremony, stood up and announced he was leaving me for Jenna, in front of everyone." "That stupid, arrogant bastard," Sarah breathed. "Are you okay? Do you want me to come over?" "No," Amanda replied, surprising herself with her steadiness. "I'm better than okay. I'm ready. Let's move forward with everything tomorrow. First thing. The bank will be ready at 9, Sarah confirmed. "The papers are prepared. Are you sure you want to do it this way?" Amanda took a sip of her wine, thinking of Mark's smug certainty when he'd said the house was half his, that his name was on all the accounts. Thinking of his comment about living in her shadow for 25 years, the resentment that had clearly been building. "Yes," she said firmly. "He chose how to end our marriage. I'll choose what happens next." As she hung up, Amanda moved through the house she'd grown up in, that she'd so happily shared with Mark for their entire marriage. Family photos lined the hallway. Emily's growth charted from infancy to adulthood, family vacations, anniversary celebrations. 25 years of what she'd thought was partnership, revealed now as something else entirely. In their bedroom, she opened Mark's closet and looked at his precisely arranged clothes, his collection of expensive ties, many of them gifts from her over the years. Tomorrow he would come to collect these things, expecting a tearful, broken woman, expecting to dictate terms from a position of power. Amanda smiled faintly and closed the closet door. Mark had always underestimated her quiet strength, mistaking her kindness for weakness. It was time he learned the difference. At precisely 9 a.m. the morning after graduation, Amanda walked into First National Bank, dressed in a navy blue suit that projected confidence and capability. Sarah Klein walked beside her, briefcase in hand, her expression professionally neutral. "Mrs. Matthews," greeted Walter Chen, the bank manager who had handled Amanda's family accounts for 15 years. "And Miss Klein, everything is prepared as requested." "Thank you, Walter," Amanda replied with a calm smile. "I appreciate your discretion." In Mr. Chen's office, Amanda signed the documents that officially froze the joint accounts she shared with Mark and transferred the remaining inherited assets, those Mark hadn't yet managed to access, into her secure accounts. The process took less than 30 minutes, but by the time they left the bank, Mark Matthews' financial landscape had changed dramatically. "Phase 1 complete," Sarah said as they walked to their next appointment. "Are you ready for Phase 2? Amanda nodded, her resolve strengthening with each step. More than ready. At 10 a.m., they arrived at the offices of Weston Financial Group, where Mark had built his career over 20 years. Amanda had called ahead and scheduled this meeting with Philip Weston himself, the firm's founder and Mark's mentor. Philip greeted her warmly, though concern etched his features. "Amanda, I was so sorry to hear about what happened yesterday. Is there anything I can do?" "Actually, yes," Amanda replied, taking a seat across from his desk. "There are some financial matters you should be aware of, as Mark's employer." Sarah placed a folder on the desk and opened it, revealing printed emails, receipts, and bank statements. "Over the past 6 months," Amanda explained calmly, "Mark has been using company resources to conduct his affair with Jenna Wilson. Company credit cards used for hotel rooms and dinners, company time spent on non-business activities, and there's evidence suggesting he's been moving client funds into unauthorized investments." Philip's expression darkened as he examined the documents. "These are serious allegations, Amanda." "They are," she agreed. "And as a major client of this firm myself, I felt you should know before the situation potentially impacts other clients or the company's reputation." She wasn't exaggerating her status. Her family's investments, managed separately from Mark's clients, represented a significant portfolio for Weston Financial. "I'll need to investigate this immediately," Philip said, his professional demeanor taking over. "You understand I'll have to speak with Mark." "Of course," Amanda replied. "I just wanted to ensure you had all the facts." As they left Weston Financial, Sarah gave Amanda an approving nod. "That was perfectly handled. Professional, factual, no emotional accusations." "I learned from the best," Amanda said, offering her friend a small smile. Their third stop was at the offices of Bedford, Klein, where Sarah's paralegal was waiting with divorce papers prepared for filing with the court. The document cited irreconcilable differences and Mark's infidelity, with evidence attached in sealed exhibits. They invoked the fidelity clause of the prenuptial agreement, detailing Amanda's inherited assets that were protected from division. "Once these are filed, he'll be served within 48 hours, Sarah explained, "probably at his office, which means tomorrow or Wednesday." Amanda reviewed the papers carefully, her teacher's eye catching a few minor typos that the paralegal quickly corrected. Then she signed her name on the lines Sarah indicated, her signature firm and unwavering. "And now we wait," Sarah said as the paralegal took the papers for filing. "Not entirely," Amanda replied. "There's one more stop to make." At noon, they arrived at Amanda and Mark's home, her home now, she reminded herself, to find a locksmith already waiting as arranged. Within an hour, all the locks had been changed, the security system reset with new codes. "Is this legal?" Amanda had asked Sarah earlier. "The house is legally yours under the prenuptial agreement," Sarah had explained. "We've documented his infidelity, which triggers the clause. Changing the locks ensures the security of your residence during a volatile transition." As the locksmith departed, Amanda's phone rang. Mark's name flashed on the screen. She took a deep breath and answered on speaker so Sarah could hear. "Amanda," Mark's voice was tight with anger. "What the hell did you do? My cards aren't working, and the bank says our accounts are frozen." "I protected what's mine," Amanda replied evenly. "As you should have expected. This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You can't just cut me off. Half of everything is mine. We'll see what a judge has to say about that." "Actually, we will," Amanda agreed. "You'll be receiving divorce papers soon, along with documentation of your affair with Jenna, which triggers the fidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement." There was a moment of shocked silence before Mark found his voice again. "That ancient prenup? It won't hold up. No judge will enforce something from 25 years ago." "My father was very thorough," Amanda replied. "The agreement was properly executed, regularly reviewed, and included a clause requiring any challenges to be raised within the first 5 years of marriage. You never objected, Mark." Another pause, longer this time. When Mark spoke again, his voice had changed from angry to calculating. "Let's not be hasty. We can work this out, Amanda. Everyone hits rough patches. 25 years is a lot to throw away over one mistake." Sarah rolled her eyes at this predictable pivot, but Amanda remained calm. "It wasn't one mistake, Mark. It was 6 months of deliberate deception, and it ended with you humiliating me in front of our daughter and hundreds of others. There's nothing to work out." "I'm coming over," he declared. "We need to talk face to face." "The locks have been changed," Amanda informed him. "Your things will be packed and available for pickup tomorrow between 2 and 4. My attorney will be present." "You changed the locks? On my house?" Mark's voice rose in disbelief. "My house," Amanda corrected, a hint of steel entering her voice. "As clearly established in the documentation you signed before we married, and reinforced by your violation of the fidelity clause." "This isn't over," Mark threatened, his angry tone returning. "You think you've got it all figured out, but you haven't seen what I can do." "Actually, I have," Amanda replied. "For 25 years. Goodbye, Mark." She ended the call and looked at Sarah, who gave her a nod of approval. "That went exactly as expected," Sarah said. "Anger, then manipulation, then threats. The typical progression." "He'll call Philip Weston next," Amanda predicted, setting her phone down. "Trying to get ahead of the evidence I presented." "Too late for that," Sarah noted. "Philip seemed genuinely disturbed by those financial discrepancies. That's not just a marital issue. That's potentially criminal if he's been moving client funds inappropriately." Amanda hadn't wanted to believe Mark capable of financial impropriety, but the evidence had been clear in the documents she discovered. Emails discussing creative accounting to free up funds for a special investment opportunity. Transfers that didn't match client authorizations. It had been these discoveries, more than the affair itself, that had shocked her most deeply. The man she'd married had been ambitious but ethical. The man he'd become was someone she no longer recognized. "What now?" Amanda asked, suddenly feeling the weight of the morning's activities. "Now you rest," Sarah advised. "There's nothing more to do today. Tomorrow we'll be busy enough when we meet him to hand over his belongings." But rest wouldn't come easily. After Sarah left, promising to return the next day, Amanda found herself wandering the empty house, feeling its spaces differently now. This room where they'd hosted countless dinner parties, that corner where they'd placed the Christmas tree each year, the study where Mark had worked late into the night, supposedly managing their investments, actually conducting his affair through emails and messages. She was in the kitchen, making tea, when Emily called. "Mom?" Her daughter's voice was tentative. "How are you doing?" "I'm okay, sweetheart," Amanda assured her. "Better than I expected, actually." "I'm leaving campus now," Emily said. "I'll be home in about an hour." "Emily, you don't have to rush back. Your friends are wonderful and understanding," Emily interrupted. "But my mom needs me, and that's where I need to be." Amanda felt a surge of love for her daughter, so principled and loyal. "Drive safely. I'll have dinner waiting." While preparing a simple pasta dish, cooking had always been therapeutic for Amanda, she received another call, this one from Philip Weston. "Amanda," he began formally, "I've spoken with Mark." "I expected you would," she replied, continuing to chop vegetables as she held the phone to her ear. "He claims the documentation you provided was taken out of context, that you're attempting to sabotage his career out of spite." Amanda paused her chopping, And what do you think, Philip? There was a heavy sigh. I think the bank records don't lie. I've placed Mark on administrative leave pending a full audit of his client accounts and company expenditures. I'm sorry it came to this, Amanda said, and meant it. I never wanted to damage his career. You didn't, Philip assured her. His choices did. For what it's worth, Amanda, I've known you both for 20 years. This isn't who I thought Mark was either. After hanging up, Amanda leaned against the counter, processing this new development. Administrative leave would cut off Mark's income temporarily, adding financial pressure to the frozen accounts and impending divorce. She hadn't planned for that specifically, but it was an inevitable consequence of his actions. She was placing the pasta dish in the oven when her phone chimed with a text message from Jenna Wilson, of all people. Amanda, I'm sorry about what happened at the graduation. I never wanted it to be like this. Mark told me your marriage was already over, that you were just keeping up appearances for Emily's sake. I need to talk to you. Amanda stared at the message, emotions swirling. The audacity of this woman, her husband's mistress, reaching out as if they could have some sort of civilized conversation, as if Amanda owed her anything at all. She typed a brief reply. There's nothing to discuss. Please don't contact me again. Almost immediately, her phone rang. Jenna calling. Amanda let it go to voicemail, then blocked the number. Whatever drama was unfolding between Mark and Jenna was not her concern. By the time Emily arrived home, Amanda had composed herself again. The pasta was ready, and the table was set for two. Mom, Emily said, rushing to hug her mother as soon as she entered the kitchen. Are you really okay? You don't have to pretend for me. Amanda hugged her daughter tightly, inhaling the familiar scent of her shampoo. I'm not pretending. I'm processing, but I'm stronger than I knew. Over dinner, Amanda explained some of what she'd done that day. Not all the details, but enough for Emily to understand that her mother was taking control of the situation. So Dad just lost access to everything? Emily asked, looking both impressed and slightly unnerved. Just like that? Not everything, Amanda clarified. Just the joint accounts and assets that were legally mine to begin with. He still has his personal accounts and investments. Emily twirled pasta around her fork, thoughtful. He called me today, tried to explain himself, said it was just a stupid mistake and that you were overreacting. Amanda kept her expression neutral, though her heart clenched. And what did you say? I told him that publicly humiliating my mother wasn't a mistake, it was a choice. And that if he wanted to talk to me, he needed to make things right with you first. Emily's voice gained strength as she spoke. Then I hung up on him. Pride mixed with concern in Amanda's chest. Emily, I don't want to come between you and your father. You're not, Emily insisted. He did that all by himself. She pushed her plate away, suddenly less interested in food. Did you know? Before yesterday, I mean. Amanda nodded slowly. I had suspicions for months. I've been gathering evidence, preparing legally, just in case. So when he announced it publicly, I was shocked by the timing and setting, but not by the information, Amanda admitted. I'm sorry, honey. I didn't want to burden you with this during your final semester. Emily reached across the table to squeeze her mother's hand. You don't need to protect me from the truth, Mom. I'm an adult now, remember? Fresh diploma and everything. Amanda smiled at that, grateful for her daughter's resilience and humor even in this difficult moment. Speaking of which, Emily continued, Lisa's dad recorded the whole ceremony. He sent me the video link, but I haven't watched it yet. I'm not sure I want to see that part. Again, we don't have to watch it, Amanda assured her. We can remember the good parts without reliving the bad. Emily nodded, and they finished dinner talking about lighter topics. Emily's plans for the summer before starting her job at a publishing house, a mutual friend's upcoming wedding, a book they'd both recently read. Later, as they cleaned up together, Emily asked the question Amanda had been expecting. What happens now? With you and Dad, I mean. Amanda dried a plate slowly, considering her answer. The divorce will proceed. Your father will collect his personal belongings tomorrow. Eventually, we'll establish separate lives. And you'll be okay? Financially and everything? Yes, Amanda said confidently. Your grandfather made sure of that with the prenuptial agreement, and I've been careful to protect what's ours. Emily nodded, relief evident in her expression. Then, more hesitantly, she asked, and emotionally, will you be okay that way too? Amanda put down her dish towel and turned to face her daughter fully. I'm hurt, Emily, and angry. I won't pretend otherwise. 25 years is a long time to share your life with someone, and discovering that the life you thought you had wasn't real, that's painful. I know, Emily said softly. But, Amanda continued, I'm also discovering something unexpected. Beneath the hurt, there's a sense of potential. For the first time in a long while, my future is entirely my own to shape. That's frightening, but it's also strangely liberating. Emily studied her mother's face, seeming to search for signs of brave pretense. Finding none, she smiled slightly. You really are going to be okay, aren't you? I really am, Amanda confirmed. It may take time, but I'll get there. We both will." That night, as Emily slept in her childhood bedroom, Amanda sat alone in her study, reviewing the financial documents Sarah had helped her prepare. Tomorrow, Mark would arrive to collect his belongings, expecting a broken woman, a house in disarray, an emotional confrontation. Instead, he would find Amanda Matthews, composed, prepared, and already several steps ahead in a game he didn't yet realize they were playing. The doorbell rang at precisely 2 p.m. the next day. Amanda, dressed in a casual but elegant outfit that conveyed both confidence and indifference, took a deep breath before opening the door. Sarah stood beside her, a silent source of support and legal protection. Mark stood on the porch, looking significantly less put together than usual. His normally impeccable hair was uncombed, his polo shirt wrinkled. Behind him, a rental car idled in the driveway, smaller and less prestigious than his usual vehicle. "Amanda," he began, his tone conciliatory, "can we talk privately for a moment? Anything you have to say can be said in front of my attorney," Amanda replied coolly. Mark's expression hardened. "So that's how it's going to be? 25 years and you won't even speak to me alone?" "You forfeited that privilege when you chose to announce our separation in the most public and humiliating way possible," Amanda pointed out. "Your things are packed in the garage. You have 2 hours to remove them." She stepped back, allowing him to enter but making no move toward physical contact or further conversation. Sarah nodded professionally as Mark passed, her presence making it clear this was a legal procedure, not a personal visit. In the garage, neatly labeled boxes contained Mark's clothing, personal items, and the few possessions that had been exclusively his golf clubs, his collections, his books, all organized and inventoried on a list Sarah handed him. "This is ridiculous," Mark muttered, looking around at the boxes. "Half of what's in this house is mine. The inventory we've provided adheres to the terms of your prenuptial agreement," Sarah stated clinically. "Your personal property is here. Jointly acquired household items remain with the property, which belongs to Mrs. Matthews under the terms triggered by your infidelity." Mark's face flushed with anger. "That prenup was signed under duress. No court will uphold it after 25 years. "You're welcome to challenge it," Sarah replied, unfazed. "However, the agreement was properly executed, witnessed, and includes regular renewal confirmations that you signed every 5 years, the most recent being just 3 years ago." Amanda remembered those 5-year reviews, her father's insistence that the agreement be periodically reaffirmed to maintain its strength. Mark had always signed the renewal documents with minimal complaint, assuming they were just a formality for Amanda's traditionalist father. He hadn't realized he was repeatedly validating the very contract he now wished to contest. "This is robbery," Mark snapped, looking from Sarah to Amanda. "You're taking everything I worked for." "No," Amanda corrected quietly. "I'm keeping what was always mine, the house that my grandparents built. The investment started with my family's money, the things you accumulated using my inheritance. I grew those investments," Mark protested. "I turned your family's dusty old portfolio into something actually valuable. And you were compensated for that through our comfortable lifestyle," Amanda pointed out. "The vacations, the club memberships, the luxury cars, all enjoyed equally by both of us." Mark began pacing, his carefully constructed charm giving way to frustration. "What about Jenna? Did you have to go after my job too? Philip has suspended me pending an investigation. You know what that means for my career." "Your career problems are the result of your own financial improprieties," Amanda stated, keeping her voice level. "If you've done nothing wrong professionally, you have nothing to worry about. You know exactly what you were doing," Mark accused. "You couldn't stand the thought of me being happy with someone else, so you're trying to destroy everything." The unfairness of this accusation stung, but Amanda refused to show it. "I discovered your affair months ago, Mark. If I'd wanted to destroy you out of spite, I could have done so then. Instead, I waited, planning to handle things privately after Emily's graduation, the milestone you chose to ruin." This reminder of his public announcement seemed to give Mark pause. For a moment, something like shame flickered across his face, before being replaced by renewed anger. "Where's Emily?" he demanded. "I want to see my daughter." "She's not here," Amanda replied truthfully. Emily had gone to meet friends, deliberately avoiding this confrontation, and she's an adult who can decide for herself when she's ready to speak with you. Mark moved closer, his voice dropping to the persuasive tone that had once been so effective with Amanda. "Look, I know you're hurt. I handled things badly, but we can work this out more fairly without lawyers. For Emily's sake, for all the years we had together." "Stop," Amanda interrupted, her voice firm. "There's nothing to work out. The terms are clear, the evidence is documented, and the consequences are set in motion. Please collect your things within the allotted time." With that, she turned and walked back into the house, leaving Sarah to supervise Mark's packing. She didn't want him to see how his presence still affected her, how the familiar cadence of his voice could still stir memories of happier times. That vulnerability was hers alone to process. In the kitchen, Amanda poured herself a glass of water with hands that trembled slightly. The confrontation had been both easier and harder than expected. Easier because her preparation gave her confidence. Harder because seeing Mark, the man she'd loved for half her life, reduced to desperate anger brought no satisfaction. Her phone chimed with a text from Emily. "How's it going? Do you need me to come home?" Amanda smiled at her daughter's protectiveness and replied, "All under control. Stay with your friends. Love you." Outside, she could hear the sounds of Mark loading boxes into his rental car, occasionally punctuated by muttered comments to Sarah. Let him vent, let him rage. Amanda had weathered the worst of the storm, his public betrayal, and emerged standing. This aftermath was merely wind and rain. By 4 o'clock, Mark had removed the last of his designated belongings. Sarah escorted him to the door, where he paused, looking past her to where Amanda stood in the hallway. "This isn't over," he stated, his voice hard with determination. "Jenna and I are going to build something better than I ever had with you. And when I get through this temporary setback, you'll regret how you handled this." Amanda met his gaze directly. "I already regret that the man I married became someone capable of such cruelty and dishonesty. Everything else is just details." Something flickered in Mark's eyes, a moment of recognition, perhaps, that he had indeed transformed into someone neither of them would have recognized 25 years ago. But it passed quickly, replaced by renewed defiance. "Goodbye, Amanda," he said finally, turning to leave. "Enjoy your empty house and your moral high ground." When the door closed behind him, Amanda released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Sarah turned to her with a look of professional satisfaction. "That went as well as could be expected," the attorney noted. "He took his designated items, made some predictable threats, but ultimately complied. We're in excellent shape legally." Amanda nodded, but felt strangely hollow. The confrontation she'd been preparing for was over, and while she'd maintained her dignity and position, there was no triumph in watching the dissolution of a quarter-century partnership. "Sarah," she said sincerely, "I couldn't have done this without you." After Sarah left, promising to call with updates on the divorce proceedings, Amanda found herself alone in the house for the first time since the graduation ceremony. The silence felt oppressive suddenly. The room's too large, too empty. She wandered into the living room, where family photos still hung on the walls. Mark's face smiled back at her from dozens of frames. Their wedding day, Emily's first birthday, anniversary trips, family Christmases. 25 years of shared history that couldn't be packed into neat boxes and removed from her life. For the first time since Mark's announcement, Amanda allowed herself to truly feel the grief that had been building beneath her pragmatic exterior. She sank onto the couch and wept, not for the man who had betrayed her, but for the life she had believed in, the partnership she had treasured, the future she had planned. She cried until no more tears would come, then sat in the gathering dusk, emotionally spent but somehow lighter. This, too, was part of moving forward, acknowledging the loss before embracing what came next. Emily found her there an hour later, curled on the couch with a photo album open beside her. "Mom?" she called softly, setting down her purse. "Are you okay?" Amanda sat up, wiping her eyes. "I am, actually. Just processing." Emily sat beside her, looking at the open album, photos from their family trip to Italy when Emily was 12. Mark stood with his arm around Amanda, both of them laughing in front of the Trevi fountain. "That was a good trip," Emily remarked. "I remember Dad trying to speak Italian to the waiter and accidentally ordering some weird fish dish." Amanda smiled at the memory. "And he ate every bite rather than admit his mistake." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Emily spoke again, more hesitantly. "Is it okay if I still have good memories of him, even after what he did?" "Of course it is," Amanda assured her, squeezing her daughter's hand. "The good times were real, Emily. What happened doesn't erase the father he was to you for 22 years. Emily leaned her head on her mother's shoulder, a gesture that reminded Amanda of her daughter's childhood. "He called again today, wanted to explain his side of things. Said you were making him out to be the villain. And what did you tell him?" Amanda asked carefully, determined not to influence her daughter's relationship with Mark, despite everything. "I told him I wasn't ready to talk yet," Emily replied. "That I needed time to process everything. He didn't like that answer. He's used to getting his way," Amanda observed. "That won't be happening as much anymore." The next few weeks passed in a strange new rhythm. Amanda returned to her teaching position, finishing the school year amid whispers and sympathetic glances from colleagues who had heard about the graduation incident. She maintained her professionalism, neither seeking sympathy nor hiding from the situation. Emily stayed for 2 weeks before moving to the city to start her new job, promising to visit often. Her presence had been a comfort, but Amanda also welcomed the opportunity to adapt to her solitude, to rediscover herself outside the context of wife and mother. Mark, meanwhile, was facing his own reckonings. The audit at Weston Financial had uncovered several irregularities in his client accounts. not outright fraud, but ethical breaches serious enough to result in his termination. According to the gossip that inevitably reached Amanda, he and Jenna had moved into a much smaller apartment than originally planned. Their dreams of luxury temporarily deferred. 6 weeks after graduation, Sarah called with an update. Mark's attorney has proposed a settlement, she informed Amanda. They're no longer contesting the prenuptial agreement or the division of assets. What changed? Amanda asked, surprised by this sudden capitulation. Reality, Sarah replied with professional satisfaction. His attorney likely explained that fighting the prenup would be expensive and ultimately futile, especially with the documented infidelity. Plus, with his employment situation, he needs to conserve resources. It was a victory, but Amanda felt no joy in it. What does he get in the settlement? His personal property, which he's already collected, his personal investments and retirement accounts, which were always excluded from the agreement, and a clean break without a protracted legal battle that would only further damage his reputation. And what do I need to do? Sign the agreement, and it's done, Sarah explained. Fastest divorce I've handled in 20 years of practice. The next day, Amanda sat in Sarah's office, pen poised over the settlement papers that would officially end her marriage. 25 years, concluded with a signature. Are you sure you're ready? Sarah asked, noting her hesitation. Amanda considered the question. Was she ready to close this chapter of her life? To move forward without the man who had been her partner since college? Yes, she said finally, signing her name with deliberate care. It's time. As summer progressed, Amanda began the process of reclaiming her life. She removed the wedding photos from the walls but kept the family pictures that included Emily. She redecorated the master bedroom, replacing the furniture she and Mark had chosen together with pieces that reflected her own taste. She started practicing yoga, joined a book club, and reconnected with friends whom Mark had never particularly liked. Slowly, the raw wound of betrayal began to heal, though the scar remained. There were still moments when a memory would ambush her. Mark's laugh during a shared joke, his hand warm against hers on a winter walk, the way he'd once known exactly how to comfort her after a difficult day. But these memories came less frequently, with less power to hurt. In August, 3 months after the graduation ceremony that had changed everything, Amanda had a revelation while sorting through old papers in the study. Among tax documents and insurance policies, she found journals she'd kept during her early teaching years, passionate writings about educational theory, plans for innovative curricula, dreams of someday creating a program to help women rebuild their lives through education. She read these youthful ambitions with growing wonder. Somewhere along the way, in the comfortable routine of her marriage, she had set aside these larger dreams, content with her classroom teaching and family life. Now, with that life irrevocably altered, perhaps it was time to revisit the vision her younger self had held. That evening, she called Sarah, not for legal advice but as a friend. I've been thinking about starting something, she began hesitantly. A foundation or nonprofit to help women who are rebuilding after betrayal or loss. Not just emotional support, but practical help, educational opportunities, financial literacy, career development. Sarah's response was immediate and enthusiastic. Amanda, that's brilliant, and exactly what so many women need. I have the resources, Amanda continued, warming to the idea as she spoke it aloud. My settlement, my inheritance, it's more than enough for me. I could use some of it to create something meaningful. You also have the experience, Sarah pointed out, both personal and professional. Your teaching background, your own journey, it's perfect. By the end of the call, Amanda had a name for her vision, Empowered Futures. And for the first time since Mark's announcement at the graduation ceremony, she felt truly excited about what lay ahead. The first person she shared her plan with was Emily, who responded with characteristic support and practical suggestions. You should talk to Professor Chen in the business school, her daughter advised during their weekly video call. She specializes in social entrepreneurship, and I know people at the publisher who could help with materials if you need them. The next few weeks were a flurry of research, meetings, and planning. Amanda applied for nonprofit status, created a mission statement, and began outlining programs. She converted the home office, once Mark's domain, into the headquarters for Empowered Futures, symbolically transforming a space associated with betrayal into one dedicated to healing and growth. By early fall, Amanda had assembled a small board of directors, including Sarah, 2 fellow educators, and a financial advisor recommended by Philip Weston. The foundation was taking shape, with plans to launch formally after the new year. On a crisp October evening, while finalizing plans for the foundation's inaugural fundraising gala, Amanda received an unexpected call from Emily. Mom, I ran into Dad today, her daughter said without preamble. At a cafe near my office. Amanda's heart skipped a beat. How was that? Strange, Emily admitted. He looks different. Older, maybe. Less confident. He asked about you. What did you tell him? Amanda asked, keeping her voice neutral. That you're doing well. That you're starting a foundation to help women rebuild their lives. Emily paused. He seemed surprised. I think he expected you to fall apart without him. Amanda smiled at that. Many people underestimate women's resilience. He asked if he could see me sometime, Emily continued. For dinner or something, I said maybe, eventually. I'm still angry, but he's still your father, Amanda finished for her. It's okay to have a relationship with him, Emily. That's between you and him. After they hung up, Amanda sat in her newly organized office, surrounded by plans for empowered futures, and realized she had passed another milestone in her healing. The thought of Mark and Emily reconnecting no longer triggered anxiety or resentment. There was a separateness now. His relationship with their daughter existed independently from the pain he had caused Amanda. That night, she wrote in her journal for the first time in years. 6 months ago, I thought my life was ending when Mark stood up at Emily's graduation. Now I see it was actually beginning again. The foundation feels right in a way nothing has for years. I'm not just surviving his betrayal. I'm creating something meaningful from it. There's a certain poetic justice in that. The ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel sparkled with elegance. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables, adorned with winter-white roses and silver accents. A banner stretched across the entrance. Empowered Futures Foundation, Inaugural Gala. Amanda stood near the door, greeting guests as they arrived. At 59, she radiated a confidence that had only strengthened in the past year. Her navy blue gown was sophisticated and flattering, her silver-streaked hair styled in an elegant updo. Several guests commented that she looked younger than she had in years. It's all coming together beautifully, Sarah observed, appearing at her side between arrivals. We've already exceeded our fundraising goal, and the event hasn't officially started yet. Amanda smiled, surveying the room with quiet pride. I can hardly believe we've come this far in just a year. The 12 months since Empowered Futures' official launch had been transformative. What had begun as a personal healing project had evolved into a respected nonprofit with 3 full-time staff members and dozens of volunteers. They had established scholarship programs, financial literacy workshops, and career mentoring services, all designed to help women rebuild after significant life disruptions. Emily arrived with her boyfriend James, whom Amanda had met several times and genuinely liked. At 23, Emily had thrived in her publishing career while also serving as a passionate advocate for her mother's foundation. Mom, everything looks amazing, Emily enthused, hugging Amanda carefully to avoid wrinkling either of their gowns. The video presentation is all set up, and the speakers are ready. Amanda had recruited several women who had benefited from Empowered Futures programs to share their stories at the gala. Their testimonials, honest, sometimes raw accounts of betrayal, loss, and renewal, would form the emotional core of the evening's program. As 8 o'clock approached, the ballroom filled with supporters, donors, and community leaders. Amanda took her seat at the main table, flanked by Emily and Sarah, while the foundation's executive director, Diane Chen, formerly Professor Chen from the business school, now retired and devoted to the nonprofit, approached the podium. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first annual Empowered Futures Foundation Gala, Diane began, her voice warm and professional. We gather tonight to celebrate resilience, renewal, and the power of community to transform lives. As Diane continued with the introduction, Amanda allowed herself a moment of reflection. A year ago, she had been frightened by the prospect of this public role, speaking to crowds, soliciting donations, becoming the face of the foundation. But necessity had pushed her beyond those fears. Each time she shared her story, it lost a bit of its power to hurt her. Each time she helped another woman take control of her future, Amanda's own strength grew. The evening proceeded smoothly through dinner, testimonials, and the video presentation showcasing the foundation's work. Amanda was preparing to deliver her own speech as the event neared its conclusion when a commotion at the entrance caught her attention. Mark Matthews stood in the doorway, his appearance a stark contrast to the elegant gathering. His clothing was rumpled, his face flushed with what Amanda recognized as the effects of too much alcohol. Beside him, a hotel security guard was attempting to dissuade him from entering. Sir, this is a private event. Unless you have an invitation. I don't need an invitation, Mark interrupted loudly. My wife is running this show. Ex-wife, he corrected himself with a bitter laugh. Amanda Matthews. A ripple of uncomfortable murmurs spread through the room as heads turned toward the disturbance. Amanda felt Emily stiffen beside her. Mom, I'm so sorry, Emily whispered. I mentioned the gala when I saw him last week, but I never thought he would. It's not your fault, Amanda assured her, already rising from her seat. With a subtle nod to Sarah, who immediately moved toward the security staff, Amanda approached the entrance with measured steps. Mark, she said calmly when she reached him, this isn't the place for whatever you're hoping to accomplish. Mark's eyes narrowed as he focused on her. taking in her elegant appearance, the respect evident in the room's hushed attention. "Look at you," he said, his voice carrying despite his attempt at a private confrontation. "Amanda Matthews, savior of broken women. Did you tell all these nice donors how you destroyed your husband's life? How you took everything I built and turned it into this?" Sarah had reached them by now, along with the security guard and the hotel's event manager. "Mr. Matthews," Sarah began professionally, "I suggest you leave voluntarily before..." "Before what?" Mark challenged, his voice rising. "Before you have me removed? Go ahead. Everyone should see what she's really like. The perfect Amanda, who waited until I made one mistake, and then demolished 25 years of marriage without a second thought." The room had gone completely silent, all pretense of ignoring the confrontation abandoned, as 200 guests witnessed the scene unfolding. Amanda was acutely aware of every eye upon her, of the Foundation's reputation hanging in the balance of her response. A year ago, such a public confrontation would have been her worst nightmare. Now, she found herself surprisingly calm. "Mark," she said, her voice clear and steady enough to carry throughout the room, "you're right about one thing. This foundation was born from the end of our marriage. But it wasn't your one mistake that ended things. It was 6 months of deception, financial impropriety, and a deliberate choice to humiliate me publicly at our daughter's graduation." Murmurs of surprise and sympathy rippled through the audience. Many had heard pieces of Amanda's story, but few knew the full extent of the public betrayal. "You're twisting everything," Mark accused, though his certainty seemed to waver as he registered the room's reaction. "You make it sound like I planned to hurt you. I just wanted to be honest." "Honest?" Amanda repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Is that what you call hiding an affair for months? Using our joint funds to finance gifts and hotel rooms? Attempting to access my inheritance against the terms of our prenuptial agreement?" Mark's face flushed darker. "That money should have been half mine. 25 years, Amanda. I deserve better than being cut off without a cent." "You received everything you were legally entitled to," Amanda responded evenly. "Your personal investments, your retirement accounts, your possessions. What you lost was what had never been yours to begin with. My family's home, my inheritance, the assets protected by the agreement you signed and repeatedly reaffirmed." She took a step closer, her voice dropping slightly but still audible in the silent room. "But this isn't about money, is it, Mark? It's about control. You couldn't stand that I didn't fall apart without you, that instead of crumbling, I built something meaningful, something that helps other women find the strength I discovered when you thought you were breaking me." For a moment, something vulnerable flashed across Mark's face, a glimpse of the man Amanda had once loved, momentarily visible beneath the angry, bitter exterior he now presented. "You moved on so easily," he said, his voice suddenly smaller. "Like I was nothing. 25 years gone in an instant." "Not easily," Amanda corrected gently, "and not instantly. I grieved our marriage deeply, but I refused to let your betrayal define the rest of my life. That's what Empowered Futures is about. Not victimhood, but choice. Not revenge, but renewal." She gestured to the room around them, to the banners and displays showcasing the Foundation's work. "Every woman here has a story of loss or betrayal, but those stories don't end with the loss. They continue with what we choose to build afterward." The tension in the room had transformed, the uncomfortable spectacle shifting into something more profound. Amanda was aware of nodding heads among the guests, of Emily's proud smile, of Sarah's quiet approval. "I'm sorry your life hasn't gone as you planned," Amanda continued, her voice softening further. "Truly I am. But disrupting this event won't change that. It won't give you back what you lost through your own choices." Mark seemed to deflate before her eyes, the angry energy that had propelled him into the ballroom dissipating as he looked around at the witnesses to his outburst. The security guard moved forward again, gently but firmly taking his arm. "Sir, I need to escort you out now." This time, Mark didn't resist. As he turned to leave, he looked back at Amanda one last time. "You really are better without me, aren't you?" The question hung in the air between them, raw and honest in a way their confrontation hadn't been until that moment. "I'm different without you," Amanda replied simply. "That's neither better nor worse, just true." After Mark was escorted out, a profound silence held the room for several seconds before Diane stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've just witnessed the very essence of what Empowered Futures represents: dignity in the face of difficulty, strength during confrontation, and the grace to acknowledge pain without being defined by it." She turned toward Amanda with genuine admiration. "Mrs. Matthews, I believe you were about to address our gathering?" The room erupted in applause as Amanda made her way to the podium, the planned speech in her pocket suddenly seeming inadequate after the raw truth of the past few minutes. "Thank you," she began when the applause subsided. "What you just witnessed wasn't part of our program tonight." A gentle ripple of laughter broke the tension further, but in many ways, it illustrates perfectly why we're all here. For the next 15 minutes, Amanda spoke without notes. sharing her journey from betrayal to purpose with a candor and eloquence that held the room spellbound. She talked about the dark days immediately after Mark's announcement, the strategic steps that had protected her financially, the emotional process of rebuilding her sense of self, and the unexpected discovery that helping others heal had become her own most powerful form of healing. 1 year ago, I thought I was creating empowered futures to help other women, she concluded. Now I understand that we are all helping each other. Every woman who finds her strength through our programs strengthens me too. Every story of renewal renews my own conviction that our darkest moments can lead to our most meaningful contributions. The standing ovation that followed was deafening, lasting so long that Amanda finally had to gesture for calm so the event could conclude. As the formal program ended and guests began circulating again, dozens approached her with congratulations, donations, and personal stories of inspiration. Emily found her during a rare quiet moment, enveloping her mother in a fierce hug. "That was incredible, Mom. I've never been so proud in my life." "Even prouder than graduation day?" Amanda teased gently. "Especially prouder than graduation day," Emily confirmed, her expression serious despite her smile. "You know, when Dad made his announcement, I thought he was destroying our family. But looking back, I think he actually set you free in a way. Free to become this." She gestured around them, at the successful gala, at the foundation that had already helped dozens of women, at the community of support that had formed around Amanda's vision. "I could have done without the method," Amanda replied dryly. "But you might be right about the result." Sarah joined them, champagne glasses in hand. "To Amanda Matthews," she toasted, "who just turned a potential PR disaster into the most effective fundraising moment I've ever witnessed. The donations that poured in after your speech have pushed us nearly 50% above our goal." Amanda laughed, genuinely surprised. "Really? Nothing inspires generosity like witnessing authentic strength," Sarah confirmed. "Every woman in this room saw herself in you tonight, standing firm while being publicly challenged by a man who underestimated her. And quite a few of the men were inspired too, based on the checks being written." As the evening wound down, Amanda found herself standing at the edge of the ballroom, watching the last guests say their goodbyes. Diane approached with the final tally of donations, her expression triumphant. "We've raised enough to fund all 3 of our major initiatives for the coming year," she announced. "The scholarship program, the financial literacy workshops, and the new legal clinic. It's beyond our most optimistic projections." "It's been quite a night," Amanda acknowledged, still processing everything that had occurred. "Your ex-husband's appearance was unfortunate," Diane observed carefully, "but your handling of it was masterful. Sometimes the universe gives us exactly the challenge we need to demonstrate our growth." After the last guest departed and the staff began cleaning up, Amanda gathered her small circle: Emily, James, Sarah, Diane, and a few key foundation volunteers, for a quiet celebration in the hotel's intimate bar. "A toast," Sarah proposed, raising her glass. "To new beginnings built on old endings. To strength found in unexpected places," Emily added. "To empowered futures," Diane contributed. Amanda looked around at these people who had supported her journey, who had helped her transform pain into purpose. "To all of you," she said simply, "who helped me remember who I was when I'd forgotten." Later that night, as Amanda prepared for bed in her hotel room, a small luxury she'd allowed herself to avoid driving home after the late event, she found herself reflecting on the symmetry of the evening. 1 year after Mark's public betrayal had seemed to shatter her world, his public accusation had instead showcased her renaissance. There was a certain poetic justice in that full-circle moment. The man who had thought to break her with public humiliation had instead witnessed her public triumph, not because she had sought revenge, but because she had refused to be defined by his actions. She removed her jewelry, the elegant earrings Emily had given her for Christmas, and caught her reflection in the mirror. The woman who looked back at her was not the same one who had sat stunned in the graduation audience a year ago. This woman stood straighter, her eyes clearer, her purpose defined not by relation to someone else but by her own vision. The journey hadn't been easy. There had been days of doubt, nights of tears, moments when the weight of reinvention had seemed too heavy to bear. But through it all, she had kept moving forward, one deliberate step at a time. Her phone chimed with a text message from Emily. "Just wanted to say goodnight, and that I love you. You were magnificent tonight." "Chidere," Amanda smiled, sending back a simple, "Love you too. Sleep well, sweetheart." Tomorrow would bring new challenges, grant applications to review, program expansions to consider, a meeting with potential corporate sponsors. The work of Empowered Futures was just beginning, its potential still unfolding. But tonight, in this quiet moment of reflection, Amanda Matthews allowed herself to acknowledge how far she had come. From the woman who had sat frozen in shock at her daughter's graduation to the founder who had stood firm in her truth at the Foundation's gala, Mark had said, "I'm leaving you," thinking those words would devastate her. Instead, they had ultimately freed her to discover who she truly was, not just a wife, not just a mother, but a woman of strength, vision, and purpose. As she turned out the light, Amanda felt not the absence of what had been lost, but the presence of what had been found. And that, perhaps, was the most empowering future of all. What challenges have you transformed into strength? How have difficult endings in your life led to meaningful beginnings? Share your thoughts in the comments below. In the end, when Mark stood screaming in frustration at the gala, what he really witnessed was the power of a woman who refused to be broken by betrayal. Amanda didn't just survive, she thrived, transformed, and ultimately triumphed, not through vengeance but through vision. Thank you for joining us for this story of resilience and renewal. Until next time, remember that your future is yours to empower.